Come on.
They're right there!
Let's go. Move, 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 move.
This episode of Choices Not Chances podcast is sponsored by Louisiana Gun Shop, located on Highway 90 West in Broussard, Louisiana, just south of Lafayette. For more information, stay tuned at the end of this episode.
This is Choices Not Chances podcast with Ryan and Matt. I'm your co-host, Matthew Charette. Sitting next to me is Ryan Rogers. Ryan.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for coming back. And as always, if you see something from this episode that resonates, something that you think needs to be mission critical and pushed out to everybody, push it out. Don't be selfish with the information. Recently, we had Gunner LaRose, the senior gunner in the Marine Corps, on the show. He's also part of the Close Combat Lethality Task Force. He joined the show to talk about the new force design topics that have been rather divisive. Towards the end of the episode, we discuss human performance training resources such as VR and simulators offered by companies such as Conflict Kinetics and Immersion. My opinion is that there's vast utility in the uses of virtual reality and simulation alike. This morning, our guest is Mr. Michael McCormack. He's the CEO of Eolian, where his mission is to enhance the performance of the world's most elite teams by turning bleeding-edge technology into mission-critical capabilities. Michael's areas of expertise include government acquisitions, business analytics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and military and law enforcement domains with focus on improving situational awareness and reducing human error rates. Today we're going to learn together what this technology can offer now and what it looks to offer in the coming years. Michael, thanks for coming out this morning and taking the time to bring us up to speed. Appreciate having you out, man.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to talking a little bit about the future, art of the possible, and where we're taking this thing.
Yeah, man. So let's just get straight into it. And we're gonna make our way back up to where we left off here. But I want to know where you come from, the family culture, where you were raised, how you grew up, siblings, things of that nature. And then I want to kind of work into how we got in this area and how you and I are kind of sitting here.
No doubt. So I was raised in an Army family. My dad was an Army officer, captain most of my life. We lived somewhere new every 2 years. And I think I was about 7 years old when Dad showed me this tool he had called a computer. And on this computer, he had some software where he could type in fake battle and essentially could say, enemy has 10,000 troops and I got 20,000 and I got these assets. And I expected a war game, like something from the movies, to start after he clicked play.
Yeah.
And when it was all said and done, all I saw was a bunch of statistics, and it was like, yeah, you're gonna win, but there's a 3% chance of casualty. Risk to force is this, risk to, and I'm like, what the heck? So from that point, I'm playing video games and stuff where I could set things like that and actually see it play out. So I was probably like 7 or 9 years old or something when I started seeing the value for commercial technology within the military. My mom was a nurse. So growing up, there was always this humanitarian side of things. She was always dealing with, retired vets from Vietnam times. She was working in the VAs while my dad was moving around. So I had a real close tie to the veteran community. And throughout my, young childhood, I was real exposed to technology just because everywhere I would go somewhere new, I would have to pick up my own hobbies and find something to dive into.
Sure.
That occupied me. So I was, go to the library, I'd read about hydraulics, and the next day I'd try to build a hydraulic system for my GoPed or something. Dad was really helpful growing up. He wasn't a genius, but he was one of those kind of guys that if he set his mind to it, he would figure it out.
Check.
Whether it was learning how to like tile floors or sheetrock a house or fix a roof after a hurricane. I remember him learning how to run chainsaws. He'd never cut down trees before and shit, but at the end of the day, he figured it out, right? He bought that book from Home Depot, and watching him over time, I realized that you may not think you can do something, but if you just continue down that path long enough, you're going to be able to do it as long as you're half smart and you just are curious. So there's a little bit of value system that came from both my parents with respect to being relentless and just never quitting and also being relentlessly curious, right? So that curiosity of I'm always asking Dad, like, hey, what's this mean? What's this? And he'd be like, go look in the encyclopedia and come back and talk to me about it, and then we can talk, right? And it wasn't kind of the asshole who would not talk about it after. I'd learn, and I'd go back and talk, and he'd be like, all right, now go read this. Go talk to my friend. I'm asking him how RPGs work one day, and he's like, go talk to my colleague who runs the RPGs, and the weapons, because I think he had given me a tour of the weapons cages back in Germany when I was like 11. But he had a pretty important role. He was working with denuclearization of Germany, and during that time, I didn't realize the critical nature of what he was doing, and went on to go into business. Right, I went to college and didn't go the military route out of high school. I went ROTC in college. I wanted to fly jets. To be completely honest, I think I drank the Top Gun Kool-Aid and was ready to fly F-18s. And
hey, look,
up,
man, that's something. That's something. If I was to do everything again, I'd do it the exact same way I'd done it. But if I had a third time, I'd have went to be a pilot. Yeah, man. I mean, can you imagine?
You live the life. I mean, these guys, they but the other side of it, I realized that they're almost. I don't want to. I'm not gonna do any Air Force bashing, but when I was in the Air Force RTC program, it was just a certain persona and mentality that I didn't align with. It didn't track with my value systems. It didn't track with who I really wanted to be as a human. Going through that officer program, and fast forward.
Can I get you to tilt your camera, lower your camera just a little bit when you set back? Yeah. That's perfect right there. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So going through the Air Force RTC program, I started to realize this wasn't necessarily the group of guys that I wanted to spend my life with. I was really adamant about winning with the right people, and at the end of the day, I wasn't ready to make the commitment to the Air Force. So I decided to not commission after 3 years in RTC, 2 or 3 years in RTC, backed out, and I got into the publishing world. I started publishing a magazine, and I created my tribe of people that I really vibed with, right? The people that had the same culture, the same vision, the same values, guys that were relentless like me, guys that would push the envelope, do things different. And we pushed a magazine for a couple years, made some money off it, but in the end, the publishing business wasn't really that great. But what we realized was all I wanted to do was work with like-minded people towards a common objective, and somehow along the way I found SOF and SOCOM, and I consider that group of rebels my family now, in a way that I can identify with them in a way that conventional and big Air Force never really attracted me to. So it's something special over there that has attracted me to that community. But it's been a long, winding road that led me from growing up in an Army family to supporting Tier 1 SOF on technology, and there's been a lot of twists and turns in between.
Sure.
Happy to answer any questions.
So exactly who are you working with? Air Force SOF or everybody?
So our contract is with SOCOM HQ.
Okay.
So the capabilities being fielded across all SOF components. There are a portion of the community that we deal with most often, and those are our Tier 2, so your Special Forces, irregular warfare, Army, SF, ODAs.
Yep.
Are really our focus. Those expeditionary teams, but certainly. From all the way from Air Force to down to them.
Sure. And so, okay, let's just, if you can give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes of what your system, the RTAC, is doing right now. What is it doing for them? What can it do for them right now? And then after that, we'll get into where it's headed.
Yeah, so RTAC is really a software app that you can install on your phone or your head-mounted display, and it allows you to see a digital replica of the battlefield, essentially a hologram in front of you as a 3D model with live data, whether it's Blue Force tracking, whether it's hostile data coming from your intel shop or otherwise. and you're able to see that in real time as a team. So, Ryan, if me and you were in the headsets right now, we'd be able to look at that AO and start developing a mission plan or start rehearsing that plan based on what we had already planned out. So the beauty of that multi-user, that metaverse type plays, is it's the same sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
And we're playing in it from 5,000 miles away or whatever, right? So when you move a blocking position or I move a landing zone, we're all going to see that, and we're going to be able to get that shared picture a lot easier than looking at a two-dimensional map or having to fly everybody into one place. So what we realized, though, is a lot of times the customers don't have these head-mounted displays yet or the proper phones. So we started offering this solution as a kit, right? A turnkey go bag. We all love a good go bag that can do something. And for me, when I first came up with this concept of RTAC, my judgment of success, like if I could check this box, it meant I'm successful, was if an earthquake hits Haiti or one of the Caribbean countries, if I can show up and map that hurricane, map that disaster zone, map that area of operations, and visualize it at the edge, whether I got 2 headsets or 20, whatever, and then be able to help somebody that's actually got to do something on the ground there without requiring internet, without requiring any clunky system like big tripods and stuff, something that was light that I could take forward with me, then it was doing its job, right? Then that meant it was good enough. So it's taken us a long freaking time to get it to that point. We had to wait on some of the technology to get smaller, right? Comms have gotten better. Edge servers have gotten smaller. Like this, like for example, this will run some of our server stuff now. It's a damn tablet. Whereas 2 years ago we needed something that was like square and box. So as everything has gotten smaller, we've been able to put it into a kit in a Pelican case and essentially ship it. And we've had a couple teams take it forward during Partner Force remote advise and assist missions, where they've flown it down south, and nothing else is providing that level of mobility or portability or deployability to the point of need, or the standalone nature of it, right? So we actually put a drone in this thing that lets them create their own 3D maps.
Yep, that's what I was going to ask next. How are you inputting this from aerial views?
Yeah, typically. So in an ideal world, right, and nobody lives in an ideal world, but doctrine says we should think about it like there's somebody that should be giving us these 3D maps. If we're the ODA, there's somebody else that should be doing that, right? Whether it's the who, but at the end of the day, they're not providing that fidelity or that 3D content in the way that these guys need it, right? So what they've ended up doing is like a good like a good 18 series guy, he figured out how to do it on his own. He'll go out and buy a drone, he'll download an app that lets him make the 3D map, and he'll find a way to within the law do what he needs to do. And so for us, we had to adjust a little bit, because my assumption going into this, Ryan, is like, oh, you got these great agencies that are just going to give you the 3D map data, and you're just going to be able to suck it in, and like, oh, Port-au-Prince, we need a 3D map on Port-au-Prince, pull it in. Yeah, right. They may have great sat, may have great, but in order to make a good 3D, high quality 3D map, you need more than what's currently being collected. So so we started providing it as a service as well. We offer the drone and the kit, lets them do their own map, but we have a service that if you want us to map something, we'll make sure we get that map.
Now, how do you go about that? You fly somebody over there with multiple drones and get a map for them, or can you use sat imagery?
It's mission specific. Sat imagery is rarely going to cut it, though.
Right.
Usually you're going to need somebody within flight range. Now
the next question to me, especially since you're contracted with SOCOM and you're already in with DoD, is we have so many loitering drone capabilities and loitering capabilities right now with 4K pods on them. My thought would be like, hey, we need to go into Mosul again. Okay, no problem. We send a hero drone up, something that's way out of sight, out of mind. They don't even know about it. This thing can stay in the air for 4 or 5 days if it needs to. And it can fly around everywhere you need to do with that 4K camera and pull those pictures. And then the question becomes, what's the legality of that? And, I don't think the U.S. government minds breaking rules if it's for national security, obviously. But like, how does that work? And are you as a civilian, you don't have a drone fleet like that. So what is that? Like, let's say I come to you as a customer and I say, you know, I want a map of, you know, whatever cartel family in Mexico's compound. How do you get that map then?
We would have to address that on a case by case basis.
Check.
Yeah, that would be a challenging one, right? That would be what we would consider a tough problem to solve. But the short answer is it's usually going to be air.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but that
but you could facilitate that request and then load those maps to whoever the unit would be going down there. That's the idea.
Roger. Yeah, I mean, ideally they're doing this on their own, right? So we basically hand them the whole software back end. We say, here's how you load your maps, and we don't ever get to know what they're doing or what they're mapping or where or when they do it. But the reality of the situation is they don't have enough enablers sometimes to do everything they need to do, even tactically. So how do you add value? And the reality is a lot of that map data is there is people who are making that map data, right? There are insurance companies. There's other people who are flying these AOs.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the challenge, which you just described, is like we have the assets in the air already. We just need a good pipeline to generate 3D data from those assets.
Yep.
That's half of it. The other half is like these drones aren't built for 3D mapping. So one obvious factor is you usually have one camera on a drone, right?
Yeah.
What we do with photogrammetry, in order to increase the speed, we have at least 5. So there's 4 pointed to the sides and then 1 pointed straight down.
Check.
And that allows us to get that 45-degree side of the building, because you got to get the side of the building in order to be able to see the door and the buildings.
Yep.
Exactly. So if you just have that straight in the deer, but with that said, there are capabilities coming through the force that have essentially video to 3D model.
Sure.
If you get a good orbit around a building, you even use a commercial off the shelf stuff that you can Google right now. You put that video feed into this tool and it's going to spit out a 3D map. The challenge is, how do you do that at a massive scale, like a nation?
How do you scale it?
If we're just talking about an embassy or a small building, like, yeah, no problem, throw an orbit around it, you're good. But when you want to do it, hundreds of square miles, that's when it comes into play that you need more cameras to get more efficiency, so that you're not over the target for you're over the target for as little time as possible, essentially.
Sure. Yeah. Another, just as you saying that, as we're talking about it, things are going through my mind of where this would have helped. This would have helped in Benghazi. This would have helped in any attack that we ever had on an embassy in a foreign country. And that's our land that we could absolutely fly, high dollar drones around, get that whole area mapped out. We own all that and we're protecting that. And then what you have is your SRT or your QRF on the inside saying TDG games. All right, if this happens from this area, this is where we're going to move. And like you said, when you have I think you said this earlier, when you had the VR on, yourself and me could be moving pieces around saying, well, if this happens, maybe we need to have this over here. And then everybody with that headset or that tech can say, well, I like this idea or I don't like this idea. And it can kind of really play out. And then can you also record the nature of these meetings? Like, let's say we're all having a meeting and we're TDGing this thing out, and then I want to send that to somebody else that wasn't at the meeting. Is there the ability to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can do like screen, a video of it. But what we usually do is we send them a saved file in ARTAC that they open, and then they get to see it play out, right?
That's what I was asking. So that's beautiful. Yeah.
So most of the time the briefs are live. So when you got like a partner force commander briefing up the chain, saying, "Hey, here's what we want to do." Usually it's a live brief, so they can say, what's your contingency for this, and actually play it out in real time. But we have had cases where they've just emailed a video of the con ops or whatever.
And this might be pie in the sky, but I'm thinking you're talking to SOCOM and you're talking about high priority, very high specific style missions. And these are missions that a lot of times the Joint Chiefs want to be in on, maybe the president wants to be in on. And if you could forward that plan to somebody and say, no, here's how jacked up this is if we don't have more people. Like, for instance, the Hamid Karzai International Airport disaster at a very high level, provable. Mission planning was provably flawed. And then you could show that to the people that are saying, you need less people. Like, no, sir, actually, we've ran this whole game plan out, and it doesn't happen a good way with this many people.
You're damn right.
That could have saved lives. And so, and you might not know much about my story, but I got out against my will, kind of retired me against my will after getting a little banged up. And then I've kind of dedicated my life to bridging the gap between the civilian and the military sector. And then showing the lethality capabilities that we do have and how we can use them, and keeping these new guys in the mode and keeping the guys that are transitioning upbeat about what's going on, even though there may have been some failures towards the top in the last couple of years. And so when I see your company, when I research what the capabilities of your company are, it's something that I want to put out to people to say, hey, we can stop some of this needless mistake, these needless losses of life if we plan better, and this is a tool that we can plan better with.
We're one day away from the next crisis where we go to respond and we realize, oh shit, the plan that we made isn't tenable.
Yeah.
And who the fuck approved it, right? And did they even understand the situation on the ground? And the answer is no, they didn't, because usually the you know better than anybody, brother, this is 3-dimensional at minimum, right? Kinetic warfare is very multi-dimensional.
Very.
And if you're looking at something on a 2D screen, time series data flat, you don't understand the real situation. And
that's right.
We spend years trying to paint the picture of our own country's challenges, right? You see in Congress, these guys will get up and talk, just talking about like the situation in Detroit or whatever the case, and it's like they can't even paint a picture of something that they can walk through. Imagine how challenging it is to paint a picture of this is the actual situation on the ground. And I mean, if you go back to Desert One, if you go back to some of the very early failures in JSOC and SOCOM, the lessons learned are we didn't paint a clear enough picture of the situation. Somebody understood, somebody knew it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that didn't permeate to everybody else. Because when I say something, it doesn't always mean the same thing to you.
Sure.
I could say metal sign, and the first thing that comes to my mind is what's behind you, and somebody else thinks it's like a sign,
a
about
billboard
music.
or something, or
a billboard or something.
Yeah.
And it's just that the ability to paint that picture as realistically as possible as a hologram is a game changer, and in my opinion, right? And I think from for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say, I would go as far as to say, game changer for sure. And I don't know what technologies DOD had when they killed Osama bin Laden. But I can tell you what, if they knew that building, they knew every single map of that building and what was below and what was above and how many stories, and they had loitering drones moving around it, they could have painted a much clearer picture for the insert. If they didn't have that. I'm not saying they didn't have something like that, or they didn't have some kind of CIA footage or, somebody in there. But having these capabilities takes more guesswork out of the equation.
Yeah. That's a good reference point, I think, to draw, since there's a lot been publicly released, especially in the last couple of years, about the assault. We all know they built compounds, right? They built these three fake, and what that means is the elite team had access to what they needed. The most elite team that had to do what they needed to do, they didn't need a hologram, right? They could literally go walk the facility all that they wanted. The problem is that the rest of the entire joint force, including our NATO allies, does not have access to the time or money or resources to go build compounds and then just train on them all day. So the reality was, like, how do you bring that capability to the rest of the force? And it's simple. You fly a drone, you do some interior mapping if it's our own, and you allow people to chalk walk it at 1-to-1 scale in a hangar as if they're, in VR.
As if they're there right now.
As if they're there right now, right?
Now tell me this. How accurate looking is it? It's with live video, so it's exactly accurate, right?
It's pretty good. I mean, the quality is improving over time. I wouldn't say it looks photorealistic.
Okay.
It's not photorealistic. But,
so it builds a digital overlay for you, though. So it's everything's the same, but you're not looking at a live stream, live caught video like from the drone.
Yeah, it's not live. Exactly. It's what we call post processed. So it'll take the frames from that video, and it can be photos or video, but And there's other forms, right? So it's not just electro-optics or photography. You could be using LiDAR or other forms of collection, which use lasers to map.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a static geometry that you're looking at with, like, imagine just a sculpture that's been painted over.
Yeah.
It's not being updated in real time. Now there are some elements, like we have, map views where I could open up a panel and see the FMV feed, or I could see, body cam footage. If I open up think about it as a TV in the sky, you just, and now I see that TV.
Yep.
But I'm looking down at the 3D map still.
Yep.
Honed in on that. So, but there's really two scenarios or two modes, I like to call it. One is the VR, like 1-to-1 scale, where you're intimate with it. You're literally chalk walking that as if you were walking the target. A foot in real life is a foot in digital. But the other is God's eye view, or what I call the jock view, where you pull it up in augmented reality, and with augmented reality, I can see you still. The beauty of AR is it's not a box over your head.
Mm-hmm.
Augmented reality is like smart glass. It's like nods.
Okay.
Where I can still see my surroundings, but I can put a hologram on my table or on my desk or in my room, right, or in the hangar. So what we'll do is 10 guys will put on the headset,
mm-hmm.
and we can still see each other. We could still see the talk. We could still see the hangar, but we're also looking at this 3D map in front of us, and that map is at a lot smaller scale. So
mm-hmm.
it's maybe 50,000 to 1 or whatever they've loaded it in at. But you could zoom in and zoom out as if you were like pinching a TV screen, but it's zooming a 3D map.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope.
To really understand. I wish I had some video. Maybe we could send you some video to clip in.
Where were you at? You're in Florida?
Yeah, Clearwater.
So if I made it to Clearwater, you could let me look at it?
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, I got a trip to Florida coming up here in just a couple of months, and a couple of veteran buddies of mine, and my boy's got a lot down there that he keeps like a wintertime, RV on that him and his family go down to. Yeah. And we're about to go down and just make sure it was good after the storms and, get it set up. Maybe when I do that, I hit you up and we come and, take some footage, take some video, look at it, whatever we can, and we can we can release that out as well.
Let's go.
Yeah, dude, we'll do it. Okay, so talk to me more about so RTAC stands for what?
It's the Augmented Reality Tactical Assault Kit.
Okay.
Some of y'all might know the Tactical or Team Awareness Kit within the DoD. It's like think about it as Google Maps for the military. It shows you where you're at, shows you where your guys are. So we called it ARTAC because it really took that concept of a 2D map with dots on it for your SA and extended it into in an augmented reality. But it works in virtual. Still works on a phone. Like our app will still run on a regular tactical phone, and 2D mode and stuff. It works on a computer, so it's not like it's limited to AR. And that's one of the things that makes us different. Ryan, across the DoD, you see it all the time, where in all the government, where they build a solution for one platform for one mission, and it's like, hey, can I use this for my mission on this computer? Like, no, you can't use it for your mission, or nor can it run on that computer. And we tried to make this thing so it was extensible enough where if we built it for Army SF who use this computer, and then the Greenberg and then SEALs come in and say, hey, we want to use it, and we use different computers, it'd be very easy to
make it compatible.
Right? So, yeah, and whether it's changing some of the features so that now we could see some underwater stuff, and then of course making it run on a Mac or whatever the SEALs want to use for that day,
right?
is gonna be is gonna be key, right?
The way you said that, are they prima donnas when you work with them?
I love the SEALs, man.
I do too, but they like short shorts and tans and MacBooks.
Hey, at least their phones ring. My Android hasn't worked for 3 days.
Hey, I hear you.
No, I really do. That's a hell of appreciation for what those guys do. I think it struck me one day when somebody said that they'd spent 3.5 weeks underwater.
Oh, wow.
How serious these guys, and just how we don't know what they really, so a lot of what they do, we just don't know. And we can watch the movies and stuff all day and read their books, but they got a challenging mission underwater, man. And,
That's a fact. That's a fact. Now let me ask you this: you said make some switches and maybe we can get some underwater stuff. Is that stuff you already do?
yeah,
You
recently
can
we've
map
been
the ocean.
yeah. So for us, if somebody else can map it,
Okay.
we can display it, right?
Okay.
And we played with some visualization, excuse me, some collection capabilities. I'm a avid fisherman, so I've probably used all kinds of different sonars and side looking things. I've even got one on my kayak that I can tow
Yeah,
behind
yeah.
me, and it maps the depth. And what we're able to do is display that in ARTAC. Um, but the fidelity is a challenge. You know, we don't have yet in the marketplace a underwater autonomous scanner that's good enough to do what I want it to do. But yeah, man, I want to let one of those loose as like a swarm in Tampa Bay and then just see where all the treasure is, right?
Yeah, man.
And then literally walk the bottom of the fishing holes that I fish every week. You know, it's going to happen. And I think so much of the world is covered in ocean, and so much of the uh, you know, GPC 2030 and competition is centered around naval and
Mm-hmm.
underwater stuff that we gotta figure that out. But yeah, imagine being able to, you know, mission plan, taking your submarine through the Mariana Trench or
Yep.
navigating around, you know, some of the areas in the South China Sea are really tough to navigate underwater. I think so. Um,
Yeah,
you
and
ma-
I'm
you
I'm sure there's still ordnance in the water in many places and set up. And you know, the more that it looks like the Pacific is where we're going to go, and you know, Gunnar LaRose made a good point. We never get the war that we want, but always the war that we end up getting or needing.
yes,
And
right.
and it, you know, a lot of the writings on the wall to be around water.
Yeah.
In the next campaign, you know, we guess it wrong, so it might be back in the desert, but I think all the writing looks like China, especially with Taiwan and just things. It's a very contentious time right now, so it's definitely the time to make sure that we have all the best assets and capabilities, you know, at our hands, at our fingertips. So, what does time look like? I know you guys just signed a new contract with DoD with SOCOM with SOF. So, what does that look like, and how long is the contract? And then kind of give me a start point where we're at now and where we look to go as this contract
Yeah.
unfolds.
So this is the initial fielding of our augmented reality tactical assault kit.
Mm-hmm.
It is the follow-on from a prototype project that we did in 2020. We started essentially a 12-month rapid prototyping effort that was funded by SOCOM, where we validated that this thing met their requirements by the end of it, and then they made the determination to field that at a larger scale, right? So we gave them one unit. They're like, heck yeah, we want more of this.
Mm-hmm.
During that time, we really were engaged with the community already. So during that whole prototyping period, we were in with every component saying, here's what we got. What do you think? And then come back 2 weeks later, Roger, we got your feedback. Here's it, where it's at. What do you think? And we would just rinse, wash, repeat. So by the end of it, we had something that the components all wanted. Like there was no dispute about whether or not they wanted this. It was who's going to own it. It was who's going to fund it. It's where's the requirement. It was
Yep.
all the
All
nonsensical,
the procurement
the
nonsense.
procurement nonsense, right? So fortunately, because it was we got a real unique prototyping contract where it's called an other transaction agreement. I think we were third or fourth one SOCOM ever did, but essentially they allow us to convert that to production much faster and
Okay.
and start fielding it much faster than would otherwise be the case. So there was, for example, no competition required to go from the prototype to the production because they'd
Mm-hmm.
already competed it way back. So there was no need for a 6 month, you know, response window and industry and then bidding. And then we were able to interact with the customer directly, which is rare. So me and you, imagine you're the guy who I'm trying to sell this thing to. If in a normal government situation, I can't talk to you too much and you can't talk to me too much. There's a line there that
Yeah.
people about what you need, and that's bullshit. Like if my job is to make a solution that's going to help you come home safe, you got to talk to me about like what you need, right? But then
Absolutely.
there's a trepidation usually where people are like, oh, I don't want to get my dick slapped because I'm not in contracting, so I can't tell this vendor what to
Mm-hmm.
build. Well,
Mm-hmm.
within our customer base, we created that trust where these guys were like, bro, if you can make that do this, it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's like, all right, Roger that, and then an hour later we have it
Yeah.
instead of going through some nonsensical aid shop to the
Yep.
requirements to mod the contract. So that contract vehicle gave us a lot of freedom of movement, which was key, really key to success. And we kept building it, and essentially, eventually, SOCOM made the final determination to fund it and move it. So what that's doing, I can't get into details about where they're going, partially because I don't have all the information yet. It's still the situation is fluid,
Sure.
as we like to say. But the key is there's a lot of these kits, both at the different configurations. Some of them are smaller, some are built for command centers, COCOM type, some are built for a small ODA, but there's a bunch of them that are going out. They're going to be shipping within the next 3 months. So here in Clearwater, we're position ourselves to start packaging and configuring and delivering those out of Florida, instead of relying on any other third party. And we're going to ship those for about 3 months, and then we have to provide. It's a 3-year contract. So what we've entered into is essentially a 3-year software agreement where they're licensing the software for 3 years. They're using us for the tech support. We got a 24/7 hotline where if a dude needs help, he's literally just going to call the number and it's going to round robin until someone answers it for the next 3 years. And from there, the last requirement is helping them to understand the next course of actions to get this scaled across the joint force and NATO, right? Because at the end of the day, this is a multi-domain situational awareness tool. It tracks perfectly with this whole JADC2, Joint All-Domain Command and Control. It tracks perfectly with NATO's idea of the data-driven battlefield and mosaic warfare and all that stuff. And the idea that like America, me and you, could be sitting here advising, our partners in the UK or vice versa with Australia and Israel all in the same room. And just the amount of logistics that if you've ever had to book a ticket in the DoD travel shop, the amount of logistics it takes just to get all these people in one spot is absurd. So we think that by 2026 our goal is to be permeated across all NATO. We're taking a real slow approach to make sure the product meets our initial customers' requirements, needs first. We want to take care of our babies, SOCOM, our COCOMs, expanding out from there into the conventional military, and from there into our Five Eye partners, and from there into our NATO partners where it makes sense.
Absolutely, and I think that definitely in the joint commands, when we have like an Axis and Allies type situation come up in the future, having everybody on the same piece of, same sheet of music and looking at the same terrain models is going to be key, especially with big logistical movements and big armies coming together. Now, tell me this, maybe because of the nature of the tech, it can't be, but can police and law enforcement use this too? Are you pushing that angle for them? SRTs and quick reaction force, SWAT, things like that.
What it really comes down to, man, and it's a sad reality, but there's always a group of people who get the nice toys first.
Yeah.
Who get the nice tech first, right? Yep. And unfortunately, our law enforcement community and especially local in the last 4 years has been pretty forgotten about.
Yep.
We failed to remember the hundreds of lives lost in law enforcement every year. I don't have this year's numbers, but I track those numbers every year, and it's usually more than we've lost and other types of engagements where we're focusing. So the reality is we've got to make this cheaper for them. We've got to make it, and by cheaper I mean more affordable. Right. We've got to make this, and we've got to make it
maybe scaled down.
Yeah, so part of it is they face different title authorities here domestically too.
That's why I was asking, what can you legally fly around a drone and look at and map and stuff like that? Yeah.
Now, what's really interesting domestically, if you go in ARTAC, and the vast majority of our data comes from open sources where we either buy it from somebody, from Maxar, and we're fusing it all together. But our data on America is freaking phenomenally high resolution and accurate. Like if you go to New York, you can walk the streets, you can read the bodega signs. If you go to Tampa, you could literally see the type of boat, some of the boats, you can see the names on the side of the boat, and you're talking about like zooming in from seeing the whole globe to zooming all the way down to Tampa, and I can see that. But if I'm a cop in Tampa, I can't just go fly a drone and
No,
get
yeah,
that
yeah.
data, because
Right.
that's some type of like, I don't even know what law I'm breaking, but I'm sure there's some intelligence collection law that they're not allowed to do that. So unless warrant or whatever. So, and but if you go online, they can get this data,
Open
right? So
source, yeah.
there's a weird space where I truly believe that we need to do a better job of providing our local law enforcement with what's already out there. They just don't
Mm-hmm.
know it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And when we meet with some of these sheriff's offices, and especially the tactical teams that have to deal with warrants, they would love to be able to like, oh, I could just see what's in the backyard before I raid.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where the fence is, or his squirter path, right, where
Yep.
he's gonna run,
Yep.
and maybe I could set up a blocking position in the back and just push him out.
For sure. They'd love that.
So, and then, oh, wait a minute, you could get somebody from SOCOM to help you plan that mission on the fly while you're moving
Mm-hmm.
remotely, and
Mm-hmm.
it already happens, right? If you have I mean, I'm sure there's hostage rescue teams across different components that come together to help.
Mm-hmm.
Or I mean, that's the extreme. I'm talking hostage rescue now, vice warrant seizure, but
Yeah, but like a high profile warrant seizure where it's a dangerous situation, I want all the knowledge that I could get.
you go out there to what the guys have to deal with in Arizona and California and West Texas with the cartels, man. I mean, those are
Crazy.
you could be walking in on 50 to 100 armed,
Dudes, yeah.
heavily armed dudes, and you're just a small police force.
Yep, that's right.
But
That's
so
right.
in short, we're very adamant about pushing it to that market. We got to find a business model that that makes it work, and part of it is the more that we sell, the less expensive it is to maintain it.
Sure. I talked to Conflict Kinetics about that too. Like, what can we do? And they're trying the same thing. And maybe instead of having a whole gunfighter gym where you have all the assets, maybe you just have like a one panel team trainer, right?
Yep.
And you're right. It's about making it affordable for them because they've been crushed the last 3 to 5 years on funding, on budgeting, on
Yeah.
esteem, prestige, all of the pride. All of that's been kind of hammered lately, and it's near and dear to me because my little brother is a cop in Ohio, in Franklin County, one of the largest jails out there, and trying to transition over to SWAT. And that's my brother, man. I need my brother to have the best technology, especially in the ways of the world for the cops right now. In America, it's just not a good. I even present to cops. I was just up in Franklin County teaching at their peace officers academy. I've done that for the last 3 years, and I tell them right up front, I appreciate what you do because you are not rewarded for your efforts in the right way, in my opinion. Like we live in a nation that wants to string you up, both the good ones and the bad ones for whatever reason. And we need to change that. And if we can't change that, we at least need to give them the technology to be as safe as they can be, to get back to their families. So the police thing is something that's very near and dear to me. I got a lot of police in my family. So talk to me about what happens after this 3 years. The idea would be, right after this 3 years, they re-up a new contract and things begin to scale, and we get out to the joint force. Is my guess, right?
Yeah. So this contract is unique in a sense that it's not just focused on this delivery. It's not just for the X number of kits or N number of kits that they're buying here. It's a vehicle for the entire U.S. government as well as our partners to acquire more of these kits. So essentially, anytime that somebody else moving forward wants to buy AR TAC, whether it's FBI, hostage rescue, or Customs and Border, they can go to SOCOM to get it.
What do they
And
lease
they
out
have-
their gear?
No, it's essentially they have to pay for it, right? They have to bring money to the table. But it's that SOCOM has that agreement with us to provide SOCOM with this, and because of the type of contract it is, it's way faster for them. So like if CBP was to try to put out a solicitation for, mission planning and border visualization of the border or whatever, it would take a year to even get something started, even if they had the money, just because of the way contracting works. But now, because of this contract, Customs and Border could call SOCOM and say, hey, I want to buy 10 of AR TAC starter kits. Say, Roger, send us the money, and then it's a day versus
A day.
year. right?
A day for all you procurement officers out there that are working at the upper echelons trying to get things squared away. Look into this what's this kind of contract called? You said
It's
only
called
been
it's an other transaction agreement, or an OTA. They came out of the Kennedy days with the space race when Kennedy wanted to cut down a lot of the bureaucracy, because we're sitting here and it's like, I need a better screw that's 2 inches smaller. It's like, it'll be 6 months. It's like,
yeah
what the fuck? I can make you one. Well, that's not the same as what you asked for, so we have to recompete it.
yeah
Well, finally he said, nah, other transaction agreements are the way to go. Essentially, they allow you to compete a prototype and say, hey, if anybody wants to build a prototype, here's what we need. And if you build it and then they select you and you win, and obviously they have to award you funding and you do it, but if you build it and you're successful, at that point they're able to transition it to what they call production way faster. And I'll point out, like, in prototyping can mean different things to different people, just like we were talking about
Sure.
the metal. A prototype cup, you might think, like, look like this, and then they said, now I want 1 million of them, go make me 1 million. And we knew what the cup was supposed to look like from the beginning, right? I want a Smoky Mountain logo, I want it to be black, I want to make me a prototype. Well, within our space, where technology is changing so fast, you don't know what the prototype's going to look like when you start. You have no clue. So the problem is, if I'm a requirements guy like the H shop or the acquisitions, and I have to write the requirement for, I need a cup that has a logo on it. It's easy if I know everything that exists on the market. I know there's clay, I know the color, I need this kind of paint, I even know how glossy I want it. But with AR, VR, with visualizing some new form of data, or like a whole new concept of a hologram, like, what are we going to do? Look at a sci-fi movie and say that's what I want?
yeah
So what ends up happening, if they try to write that requirement normally using the federal acquisition regulation processes, they'd say, okay, Mike, I need a mission planning system that uses the HoloLens 1 and that uses this technology. And then by the time you start the work, HoloLens 3 has come out.
yep
And they're like, wait a minute, we don't. And then so then you're like, sir, we got to change the contract to do HoloLens 3. Roger. 3 weeks later, maybe, okay, we're good, HoloLens 3 now. But then all of a sudden, instead of head-mounted displays, there's a projector that's making holograms. It's like, I don't want this headset anymore. Why the hell are we buying a headset? Well, that was the requirement initially. So, well, we got to go back and ask for something different called the projector. And when they do that, the whole thing has to start from square zero, and they got to go back and okay, we're looking for a projector-based mission planning system instead of a head mount. And that whole process, that's why we end up so far behind the technological curve in most of these areas where we need to catch up. So OTAs, they became a buzzword really in the last 2-3 years. Cross Army started using them a lot. The Defense Innovation Unit started using them a lot. Congress has been slapping back a little bit at some of the flagrant use of them, but at their core, they're really meant for small businesses, Ryan. They're not meant to be delivered by a big firm. And it's almost a trust fall, right? It's a trust fall where a business can do what they want to do without the government, like, checking every little step of the process. But rather said, like, hey, it's big boy rules. The goal is to make a tool that helps us understand the AO. Go.
I like that.
So
I like that
OTA. Yeah, that's, hopefully that helps to understand the difference there.
That cleared it up for me. I hope it cleared it up for a lot of the viewers here, because procurement is just one of those things. And I've heard this story that you're saying from several different contractors saying, by the time we can even get their initial wants handled, their wants have changed because of how long it takes them to procure the money, the grants, the timeline, clear everything, get the red tape and the bureaucracy out of the way so that we can make this thing. And so if OTAs is the way, OTAs is the way. Just make sure you're, I'm sure that when you're going into the prototype method, if you have a bunch of undeliverables, you're not going to get selected as the winner. But it's
if you start, so this is how I would handle it if I was in their shoes. if a company fails consistently, you don't work with them.
Right. It doesn't seem like that's the way we do business, though. It seems like we pick a company, they fail to deliver 5 years into a contract, and then we put a new contract up there. The same company says, I'll undercut everybody, and then they got 5 more years of funding to deliver a product that is not even an 80% solution. And so,
I mean, no, I'm not complaining about this, but I will say that, like, if Eolian was to fail a task order, it would probably ruin us, right, as a firm. And we've delivered 30 plus, task orders on our stuff, everything from RTAC to stuff that does AI, for computer vision, text. Like,
sure,
we've done a lot of other stuff, right, besides AR and VR. But the reason that we keep getting engaged is because we keep succeeding in the mission, right?
We're delivering.
We deliver, and I think that the Booz Allens of the world can leak national secrets and still win trillions of dollars worth of contracts. And as a small business, we really live and die based on our next task order. And the government, but that's how teams operate too, bro. You're only as good as your next mission. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you failed, succeeded. If you all blow up on this one, it's over, right?
Right.
So go win every time. That's that attitude. I think it's hard. You gotta find people that just trust the business. It's abnormal for government to operate like this, where they're just like, very vague and let you go drive the requirement. But the flip side of it doesn't work either. I've had contracts where the government said, we're going to give you feedback every 2 weeks, and you're going to meet with these teams, and they're going to help you along the way, and they can't fulfill that side of it. So industry, what are you going to do as industry? Just be like, oh, okay, we're good. No, you're going to go out there and get the feedback yourself. You're going to show up at Fort Benning or Joint Base Lewis McChord or wherever you got to be to get the feedback.
That's right.
And I think a lot of firms forget that. Like, you're in this to support those dudes, and if the government doesn't get you access or feedback, you better go get it yourself.
Yeah, nobody's going to help you.
No, bro, that's it.
Nobody's helping just out of the goodness of their heart. That's a fact. Especially in a cutthroat industry where people are trying to square away millions or billions of dollars from the government. Be on your game. That's a fact. Well, man, we've been going for about an hour, and I feel like I have a way better understanding for Eolian and what you do. And I'm serious. If I can get down in the next 60 or 90 days down to Florida, I'm going to get down there and I'm going to hit you up because I want to check this out. And I think that generally speaking, and maybe this makes me sound bad, maybe not. But generally speaking, you don't get this red tape buff back by guys that are in procurement and acquisitions who have been to combat, who have seen real combat. In my experience, it's those guys that want everything for those troops, and they care nothing about the money, only about, does your product work? And if it can save lives, I want to have it to my guys.
Yep. You're damn right, man.
And the problem is we have a lot of people in procurement and acquisitions that have never been to combat, have never lost a friend, have never been shot, have never been close to a low debt IED, have never been caught in a near ambush. And then we have freshmen, Congress people, both men and women, who don't believe that war is real, and they're the ones that fund us. And so this is, my effort, my aim at making sure they know what's out there, what those things can do for the active hitters that are going down range and providing a blanket of freedom that they don't even understand. So from the bottom of my heart, myself, Matt, we appreciate you taking the time this morning to come on, talk about Eolian, talk about what you have with augmented reality, with virtual reality and artificial intelligence and the like. I wish you guys all the luck in the future, because it's national treasures that are weighing their skin in on this game. So again, Michael, thanks for coming out, man. Thanks for taking the time. And I'm going to shoot you some personal information of mine so that we don't have to keep communicating on social media. And then we can set up a trip to kind of check this stuff out and kind of show everybody the things at least that we can show them.
Yeah, man, it's been an honor. I appreciate you letting us share the story. Encourage you to get out here, and hopefully by then I'll have a nice boat to go out fishing on or something.
Hey, I will not complain about that. I promise you that. I love me some fishing. Right, so, hey, appreciate it. And until next time, guys, choices, not chances.
Choices, not chances. Later.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening to Choices Not Chances podcast. Please share, like, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch our podcast. You can also follow us on social media at Choices Not Chances Podcast. Thanks, and have a great day.
Louisiana Gun Shop, your firearm headquarters, specializing in concealed carry guns, ammo, and training. You can get your Louisiana permit with us. Also a large selection of AR-15s, or if you are that build-it-yourself type of guy or gal, we have all the parts to build and customize your own AR-15. Glock, SIG, Taurus, Ruger. We have all the brands, both in the store or at LouisianaGunShop.com.
Not too far. You're marking the building. Hit him. Yeah, that's good.
That's a good shot. That's money. Yeah.